The Kale Divide. Understanding the organic elite versus food desert. Have you ever walked down a grocery aisle and felt like you were navigating two completely different planets? On one side, you have the organic elite, the group that wouldn't dream of buying a tomato unless it was sun-ripened and whispered to by a local farmer. On the other side of town, you have food deserts, where the only available vegetable within a 3-mile radius is the wilted lettuce on a fast food burger or a dusty can of green beans at a gas stat. This isn't just about picky eaters versus convenience seekers. It's a deep-seated sociological phenomenon that reflects our wealth, our geography, and our systemic inequalities. It's a story of status, symbols, urban planning, and the silent struggle for health in a landscape that makes it nearly impossible for some to survive. Who exactly is the organic elite? When sociologists talk about the organic elite, they aren't just talking about people who have a lot of money. They're talking about a specific type of cultural capital. In the mid-20th century, luxury was about excess, big cars, fur coats, and processed delicacies. Today, status has flipped. The ultimate flex isn't showing off how much you can consume, but how selectively you consume. Eating organic, non-GMO, locally sourced, and ethically raised food has become a badge of identity. It signals that you have the education to understand complex nutritional labels, the time to shop at boutique markets, and the disposable income to pay $9 for a carton of eggs. For the organic elite, food is more than fuel. It's a moral statement. Buying organic says, I care about the planet, I care about my body, and I am disciplined enough to avoid the poison of industrial agriculture. But there's a shadow side to this. By turning healthy eating into a high-status lifestyle, we've inadvertently framed it as something that only the worthy or enlightened do. The stark reality of food deserts. While the organic elite are debating the merits of raw versus pasteurized kombucha, millions of people are living in food deserts. A food desert is typically defined as a low-income area where a significant number of residents lack easy access to a supermarket or a large grocery store. In urban areas, this usually means living more than a mile from a store. In rural areas, it's 10 miles. Imagine you don't own a car. To get fresh broccoli, you have to take 2 buses, carry heavy bags in the rain, and spend 3 hours of your Saturday just commuting. Or you could walk 2 minutes to the corner bodega and buy a bag of chips and a soda for $3. For someone working 2 jobs or a single parent with limited time, the choice isn't about lack of education or laziness. It's a rational response to a hostile environment. In these areas, the food landscape is dominated by food mirages, where healthy food is physically present but too expensive, or food swamps, where unhealthy fast food and convenience stores overwhelm any healthy options. Why can't they just eat better? One of the most common misconceptions the organic elite holds about people in food deserts is the idea that if they just knew better, they'd eat better. This is a classic example of individualizing a systemic problem. Sociology teaches us that our choices are constrained by our structures. If your environment only provides high-calorie, low-nutrient food, your body will eventually adapt to that reality. Furthermore, there is the poverty tax. Buying in bulk is cheaper, but if you only have $20 to last until Friday, you can't buy the $50 bulk pack of chicken. You buy the $2 frozen pizza. There's also a psychological component. When your life is high stress due to housing, instability, job insecurity, or systemic racism, high-fat, high-sugar foods provide a quick, reliable hit of dopamine. In a world where you have very little control, a bag of salty snacks is a small, affordable comfort. Shaming people for these choices without addressing the stress of their environment is not only unhelpful, it's elitist. The geography of inequality, the divide between these two groups, is etched into our maps. Gentrification often brings whole foods into a neighborhood, but it frequently displaces the very people who lived there before. When a high-end organic grocer moves in, property taxes and rents go up. The neighborhood becomes a food mirage for the original residents. They can see the kale, but they can't afford it. This Geographical sorting creates a feedback loop. Wealthier areas attract better infrastructure, better schools, and better food. Disadvantaged areas see supermarket redlining, where major chains refuse to open stores in certain zip codes because they perceive them as low profit or high risk. This leaves the residents at the mercy of dollar stores, which have recently become the fastest growing food retailers in the United States, despite offering almost no fresh produce. The health gap, a tale of two bodies. The consequences of this divide are literally written on our bodies. In the organic elite, often enjoy longer life expectancies and lower rates of chronic illness. Their wellness is a product of their environment: clean air, walkable streets, and nutrient-dense food. In contrast, residents of food deserts face higher rates of type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and heart disease. This isn't a coincidence. When your diet is forced into shelf-stable, processed goods, your long-term health pays the price. This creates a cycle of poverty. Poor nutrition leads to poor health, which leads to medical debt and missed work, which keeps you trapped in a food desert. We have to stop looking at obesity or malnutrition as personal failings and start seeing them as public health symptoms of an unequal food system. Bridging the gap beyond the boutique. So how do we fix this? It's not by teaching more cooking classes to people who don't have a working stove or the time to use one. It requires structural change. Urban agriculture, turning vacant city lots into community gardens, can provide fresh produce, but more importantly, it gives communities agency over their own food supply. Mobile markets, if people can't get to the store should go to them. Many cities are experimenting with veggie buses that bring affordable produce to transit deserts. Subsidy reform. Currently, the government heavily subsidizes corn and soy, the building blocks of processed food. If we shifted those subsidies to fruits and vegetables, the price of a salad might finally compete with the price of a cheeseburger. Incentivizing grocers. Cities can offer tax breaks or grants to supermarkets that agree to open in underserved areas and stay there. A shared food future. The divide between the organic elite and food deserts is a mirror of our society's broader inequalities. Food should be a human right, not a luxury item or a status symbol. As long as eating well is tied to your zip code and your bank account, we will continue to have a fractured society where health is a privilege of the few rather than a right for all. Real change happens when we stop judging what's in our neighbor's grocery cart and start asking why their neighborhood doesn't have a grocery store to begin with. Next time you're picking out that organic, non-GMO kale, take a second to think about where the nearest grocery store is for the person working the register. That gap is where the real work begins. Both supermarket redlining and the rise of food cooperatives are two sides of the same coin. One explains how the private market abandons low-income neighborhoods, while the other shows how those same communities are reclaiming their food sovereignty. Here's a breakdown of how these forces shape where we eat and how we live. Part 1, the mechanics of supermarket redlining. The term redlining originally comes from the 1930s, when banks literally drew red lines on maps around neighborhoods, mostly black and immigrant communities, to signal they were too risky for home loans. Supermarket redlining is the modern corporate version of this. It isn't always as explicit as a red line on a map, but the results are just as devastating. 1, the profitability myth. Large grocery chains use sophisticated algorithms to decide where to build. These algorithms prioritize high-spend households. They look for areas with high median incomes and high car ownership. When a neighborhood falls below a certain income threshold, it is flagged as low profit. Corporations often ignore. They may not. They know the fact that people in these areas still spend billions on food. They just do it at small, overpriced convenience stores because they have no other choice. 1, high barriers to entry. In lower-income urban areas, land is often fragmented and assembly is expensive. It's much easier for a developer to build a massive big-box store in a suburban greenfield than to navigate the zoning and logistics of an inner-city block. Corporations use these logistical hurdles as a justification to stay in the suburbs, further isolating urban populations. One, the risk perception. There is often a biased perception of risk associated with low-income neighborhoods, including concerns about shrinkage, theft, or security costs. Even if the data doesn't support a high level of loss, the perception of it prevents investment. One, the exit strategy. Redlining also happens when a store leaves. When a supermarket closes in a middle-class suburb, another usually takes its place. In a marginalized neighborhood, when a store closes, the building often stays vacant for decades or is replaced by a dollar store. This leaves a retail vacuum that is quickly filled by fast food chains and liquor stores. Part 2, the rise of community-led food cooperatives. If supermarket redlining is the exclusion, then food cooperatives, co-ops, are the solution. Tired of waiting for a corporate giant to save them, many communities are taking matters into their own hands. What is a food co-op? A food co-op is a grocery store that is owned and governed by its members, not by outside shareholders. Instead of profits being sent to a corporate headquarters in another state, the surplus is reinvested into the store, used to lower prices, or returned to the members. Why co-ops are winning. Food sovereignty. Co-ops allow a neighborhood to decide what goes on the shelves. If a community wants culturally specific produce, like collard greens, cassava, or specific spices, they can vote to stock them, whereas a national chain might only stock standard items. Keeping money local. For every dollar spent at a corporate chain, only a few cents stay in the neighborhood. In a co-op, the money stays local, supporting local jobs and local farmers. The double bottom line: co-ops pursue two goals: staying financially viable and fulfilling a social mission. They are willing to operate in areas that corporations deem unprofitable because their primary goal is feeding people, not maximizing dividends. Challenges of the co-op model. It's not all sunshine and sprouts. Starting a co-op is incredibly hard. It requires massive community buy-in, years of fundraising, and navigating complex legal structures. Many co-ops struggle to compete with the rock-bottom prices of giant retailers who have massive economies of scale. The bottom line: supermarket redlining is a systemic failure of the private market to meet a basic human need. Food cooperatives are a grassroots act of resistance against that failure. One is a top-down withdrawal of resources. The other is a bottom-up cultivation of resilience.